Hello and welcome to this episode of the AI Show. How's it going, everybody? My name is Seth Juarez. I'm excited to be here. We have a doozy of a show today. I'm excited. I'm going to learn some stuff. I have a good friend here. She's going to break my stuff. It's going to be awesome. It's true. It's true. Before we get started, where's everybody coming to us from? Put it right in the chat. This is live. There's no recorded part in this show. It's all free range, artisanal, AI, organic. I'm excited. Where's everybody coming to us from? I'm excited. Oh, we have Jay McCormick here. Hello, my friend. So good to see you. Welcome. Oh, look, Ashish. How are you, bud? Good morning. Gabriela. Good morning, my friend. Or good afternoon, wherever you're from. We have people from everywhere. Hold on. Janice Q's here. Janice Q number 7. He gets the special car dealer announcement. Ecuador, bienvenido, amigo. Is it gluten-free? It's a great question. We will allow it for this time around. It will be gluten-free, of course. Sunny Boston, welcome. From sunny Boston, welcome. Another Bostonite. I was in Boston one time, and I got some pizza. It felt a little inappropriate, I'm not going to lie. If I was in New York, it's a different kind of pizza. Brian, hello, buddy. Man, it's been a long time. Some folks sometimes pop on that I just have not seen, and it's delightful to see you. Saduki! I haven't seen people in a long time. Like this, something happened a couple of years ago, and I didn't go anywhere. Still haven't gone anywhere. It's been bananas. Welcome. So let's talk about what we're going to be talking about today, and then we'll get our guests on. That was my sound effect from my mouth. It wasn't even from my computer. All right. So now that we got a couple of people here, we're going to get started. We have an hour of goodness today, and I'm going to write it down because I bought this thing during the pandemic, and if I don't use it, I feel like it was money wasted. But if I use it now, it's like it was good money spent. Oh, someone from Taiwan. Welcome. Wonderful. Good morning. Soggy morning greetings from soggy Seattle. Yeah. Yep. It's true. Someone wants me to do like Amit from. I'm gonna turn it on because you spelled it all out, Amit. So we're gonna just say it. Amit from Chicago. How about them apples? Covered up my face. Probably made the show better. All right, let's start with number one. There has been all the rage last couple of months with the AI kids. We're gonna talk about being responsible with LLMs. Yes, large language models. The one y'all are probably the most familiar with. I'm gonna write this in red. Is ChatGPT. Like, if I say ChatGPT, I'm probably like, look, 10 more people showed up. I said ChatGPT. That's the first half. We're going to go through this in depth with Sarah because she knows her stuff. And then number two, I built an app. I built an app with ChatGPT. I can't write when people are watching. Look away for a second. With ChatGPT. And she's going to break it. because it's not that I was irresponsible, I was just ignorant. That's what I'm going to tell myself. I was just ignorant, and we're gonna break it and see how we can fix it. So this is what we're talking about today on the AI show. It's always delightful to be here with folks to talk about this. And there's no pre-recorded stuff because Sarah is not a pre-record type. That's not true. We pre-recorded something once. I feel like everyone is like irresponsible AI right now. It's like, make a thing, but no, you should probably think about stuff. Right, Sarah? You should think about stuff when you build these kinds of apps.
Yes, definitely. All sorts of stuff.
I got like the fancy elevator music on now that you come on. It just happened to be that way. If you don't know, a couple like last year, Sarah and we did a show where she was always looking at me like, "Dude, you should be more responsible with AI," and it was obviously a bit, but I thought it was delightful.
Yeah, the entire punchline was just me standing over your shoulder.
And I even brought a book for you to hold. And I brought this book, and you were like, "Hey, that's old stuff, Seth." And I'm like, "Dang it! Try to look smart in front of Sarah. It didn't work." All right. So should we get this party started?
Absolutely.
All right. So I'm gonna turn the music off. Um, and then we're gonna do the serious bit, but not so serious because usually, Sarah, you don't know this, but we pre-record a show and then I play it and people answer questions. But I thought this one needed like room to like breathe, like after Thanksgiving dinner. For those that don't know what Thanksgiving is, it's we make food for 3 days and then we eat for 20 minutes and then we're all full and we kind of just we need room to sit around. I feel like this needs to be like an after Thanksgiving discussion.
Yeah, I think it's a topic you really have to wallow in, right? There's a lot to it.
I love it. I love the word wallow. All right, so I'm going to get started because what we do, and I was telling people, we release like the recorded part for because Microsoft is awesome, and we need some more polished stuff for people that are not. And so I do that too. And so we're going to cut something out and put it in there. But I feel like this is just going to be the full hour of just responsibility with AI. So let's do this. I will get started right now. You're not going to want to miss this episode of the AI Show where we talk all about being responsible with large language models with my friend Sarah Bird. Make sure you tune in. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the AI Show. We're talking all about being responsible with large language models with my friend Sarah. Sarah, how you doing? It's been a while.
I'm great. Happy to be here. Been a busy time working on LLMs.
I was going to say fantastic, but it's been a lot. I mean, it's a lot. Nobody's ever been as interested in this stuff as they have been nowadays. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's been absolutely crazy, but also I think very exciting. I know it's even a hot topic of, wow, we're moving so quickly with LLMs. Are we ready to do this responsibly? And I can share sort of from how it's felt to me on the inside is absolutely, like, we've been working on this for years. And so the last 6 months is just the chance to go faster, have bigger impact, do more at scale. And it's been a wild ride, but absolutely extremely rewarding.
Awesome. But for those that don't know you, Sarah, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I lead responsible AI in our Azure AI organization, which means I spend all my time now on the topic we're talking about today. But generally, my goal is to ensure that we're figuring out how to take new AI technologies and develop them responsibly and ensure that customers can build on top of them responsibly. And with this new generative AI wave, that means I'm spending a lot of my time also working with different teams inside of Microsoft to kind of show how this can be done at scale. So we worked really closely with GitHub Copilot. I've recently spent all my time sort of on the responsible AI development of the new Bing. And now we're looking at how to take all of that and enable everyone else to use it.
So this isn't like oh no, we need to be responsible here at the end. This is something you've been working on for years.
Yeah, responsible AI at Microsoft actually sort of officially the date we say started in kind of 2017, but we actually even had started groups in research before that. But that was sort of the moment we started figuring out how are we going to do this in our products and how are we going to do this at scale. And with each sort of new generative AI model that's come out, it's been a new opportunity for us to take the ideas in research and really figure out how to put them into practice and then turn that into platform technology. And so actually when GPT-4 came out, this was the first moment that we were ready to do responsible AI from the beginning. We actually had an elite team of red teamers were basically the first people to touch the model to assess what it could do, what it couldn't do, what the risks were, so that we were just ready to go from that moment and kind of do the next wave of work at the same rate that we were doing application development.
And it's interesting because it's kind of like a chicken and egg problem. We want to do this stuff responsibly, but you got to know, like, how are people going to break it? Because this is unlike any other software we've built before.
Yeah, and that was actually and that's part of why we bring in red teams and people whose entire mindset is just how do I break this, in order to kind of bring that to it so we can see all the ways it can be broken. Now, these models are really large surface area, right? They are so powerful, they can do so many different things. And so we've actually had to bring in different type of experts, I think, who've never red teamed something before to do that, but who had domain expertise, right? National security expertise, legal expertise, fairness expertise to do that. And so even that kind of process we've had to expand. And it still was, I think, a big, open question with the development of some of these newer applications because it's so new. We don't know how users are going to use it. So it might also break in ways that we weren't expecting because we just had no idea someone would think to do that with the technology. And so that's something where we're just constantly working to try to get ahead of it before we release things. But it is one of the I would say exciting challenges of this is just all the things the tech can do and all the creative ways people use it.
So let's back up a minute and let's talk about responsible AI in general, and then responsible AI as it pertains to large language models like ChatGPT. What do you say about that?
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right, so let me bring up, because you told me to show some slides here. Here they
Yep.
are.
These are my beautifully designed smart
So
art
these are
slides.
for those that are listening on Spotify, it's a circle that has it almost feels like you use the built-in PowerPoint stuff, right?
I did. This is in fact PowerPoint designer at work putting smart art to use. But I think this framework has actually been really helpful for people in terms of thinking about responsible AI, and so I think it is a powerful circle for us to look at. And so if we look at each of these steps, the first one is what we're just talking about: identify. We have to figure out what are all of the potential challenges that we may have with the technology that we need to take into account when we're developing it. And so this first step is actually a place where we have had to really bring in a lot of expertise and innovate to figure out what are all the different ways that this could cause sort of responsible AI difficulties. And so, as I mentioned with GPT-4, the first step we did for this is we brought together a group of experts with all different types of domain expertise to understand what the raw technology could do. Then, once it was developed in the application, we had ongoing red teaming occurring weekly to identify new potential issues. You can also have processes here where users could submit an issue that they see, right? And that would allow you to identify new issues that maybe you hadn't seen. And so, constantly trying to look at something from every angle and identify all of the things you have to take into account. And this is a really key step because this sets you up for what do you need to do to measure those issues and what do you need to do to mitigate those issues. And so this one comes first, but it's also sort of evergreen, and particularly in these large language models have large surface area, you're constantly needing to kind of identify and understand more deeply. And so this is one where we've really had to do a lot. And the nice thing is that at Microsoft, because we have a lot of expertise in this space, we're able to do the first wave of this and kind of do this on the raw technology and share that information out with customers. And so if you look, for example, in Azure OpenAI, if you look at our transparency note documentation, which is the responsible AI documentation, just part of your regular developer docs, we will provide the different issues that you need to look at so that
Right.
you don't have to bring in all of that expertise. You have a great starting point kind of coming from our expertise, and then you can really focus on what's unique for your application and your domain expertise.
And the cool thing about this is that it requires you to have a diversity of people because the surface area is so large. You're going to have to measure, or not measure because we're not there. That's the part I don't understand that hopefully you're going to help me with. But you need to identify from a large, different points of view in order to make sure you cover the surface area.
Yeah, absolutely. Both because users use it in many different ways and because there's so many different content types. And then you also, at this point, also need the like technology expertise, right? There's different ways the technology can behave. So you really have to bring all of those together to do this step, especially when you have a foundational new technology like GPT-4.
So this is where I understood this was. I work with someone that you work with, Bernush, who taught me. You need to measure. You need to not measure, but you need to identify the harms that you may cause to people before you start doing this. But the second part that I have a hard time with is how do you measure that? And that I think is the second in this beautifully designed circle by PowerPoint.
Yes, and I think measure it's true. It's a really important step to understand, is this harm being realized and at what scale? And so we think of identify as just an existence proof that like this could be a harm or it's happening in this one example. Measurement is the thing that's telling you, oh, actually it's happening in 90% of the examples, or it's
Ooh.
only happening in Spain for some reason, right? And
Mhm.
so measurement is a lot giving you that like actually robust approach. Now, the challenge that we had was we had a great approach. For example, if you take quality of service fairness, which I'm sure something Marnoush has come on and talked
Oh
about,
yeah.
but this is the fairness and the accuracy of the model, right? And so that we have a robust measurement approach, right? You're actually looking at the factors and groups you want to measure, you're designing data sets, then you're looking at the score. Now, a challenge we've had in generative AI was the harm type that you see for fairness is what we call representational harms, which is how people are represented in the content. And all of these types of fairness are in our responsible AI standard. So, and that's public now, so you can go check it out. This is goal F3 in the standard. But this was something we really struggled with, which was how do we measure that? And good, I like the link coming up there. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I got
Um,
you.
and the responsible AI standard, we didn't really know how to do it. And what has happened is that generative AI is not only an amazing tool in general for many
Yeah.
different types of applications and a responsible AI interesting surface for us to work, it's actually an amazing responsible AI tool. And so what we have discovered is that actually GPT-4 can work great for responsible AI measurement. It actually allows you to better understand if the harm is being realized. And so we've started really building a lot of new measurement based on these new technologies. And thank goodness that this has actually happened, because uh, this is also the time in the rise of prompt engineering and meta prompts, which we'll talk about in a bit. And if you haven't yet really played around with meta prompts, you will find it's wild, right? Like a single change in a word can change the whole application behavior, and it can change the whole responsible AI behavior. And so to do that robust kind of engineering where we're going between trading off quality and safety and trying to get the best of all of them, if we didn't have measurement, I don't know what we would have done, right? And so this has been like just a critical step to actually make this work. And also because, as we were saying, it's such a large surface area, you can't possibly just probe it all manually and feel like, oh, I know it's working well in all of these cases. And so measurement, I think, I just cannot say enough about how much people need to invest in measurement. And we're working to make this easier for people, of course, but I think we're really going to see this as a key responsible AI thing going forward.
So that's an interesting thing because if I understood you right, I don't know how much you can say. Because if you can't say something, that's cool too. Because obviously, I think Microsoft is still working on stuff. But I heard you said it's such a large surface area, and you want to measure stuff. And you said something about GPT-4 doing the measurement. Am I getting this right?
Yeah, and we had said a little bit of this in the kind of Bing launch keynote, But generally, we have been using the OpenAI technology to both like simulate interactions so that you can be having conversations at scale. And then we were using another copy of the model basically to score those conversations. And so that allowed us to make basically automated measurement pipelines. And there's a lot more to it to make it work for all the different types of responsible AI harms that you want to consider. But that being able to do that has just been game changing for us.
And that's interesting because as I'm thinking about that, this isn't a new concept because you remember generative adversarial networks did similar work in that like you had one model producing a thing and another model checking if a thing was fake, and as they fought each other, they both got a lot better at doing both.
Yep. Yeah. And I think it's like the same kind of concept, but the difference is now that we have an incredibly powerful language model, it turns out that all of these responsible AI concerns are language too. And so it has such a more sophisticated understanding of language that it's actually good at it. Right. And that's, I think, the difference is we could have done it before, but it wasn't good.
So now that we can measure the question becomes, because like as I understand these things, and I've said this before, large language models are giant sophisticated text calculators wherein you give it text and it produces the next n likely tokens, I guess is the way I think about it. Once you've found or measured a harm, whether it's representational or any of the others, how does one go about mitigating or fixing?
Yeah, that's I guess the question we're asking ourselves every day.
Yeah.
And I think that this is actually a front that has gotten a lot more interesting and exciting as well. So even let's say a year ago, we were really just focused on one mitigation, which was the external safety system that goes around the model. But now there's so many more options available. And so if you want to go to the other side, slide, Seth,
Let's
then we
do it.
can look at that. So originally, as I was saying, the all we really had was putting a safety system around the model, which is kind of this second layer. And that allowed you to just like sort of crudely clean up when the model made a mistake. And I think that now we're seeing we have a lot more tools available and that we want to use all of them. And so if we start at the core model level, if you want to animate this first one, one of the things that's really kind of new and exciting in the research domain, but is now actually starting to become a reality, starting with ChatGPT and GPT-4, is us using RLHF, which is reinforcement learning with human feedback, as a responsible AI tool in the model itself. And so teaching it how to respond to certain types of questions or where not to respond to a question. We've also been using RLHF to reduce, well, the demo we're going to look at, to keep the model more grounded, right? To have it stay true to the data that we've added for the generation. And so this is a key mitigation that's now available. And this is something that OpenAI is doing, and we're doing very closely with them on behalf of our customers. And so then these models are available in Azure OpenAI, and so you get the benefit of this work from us. Then
And that's
around that, yep.
And that's, if I may, and so that's interesting because the way I used it, and now I'm already starting to see how I did it incorrectly, is I just called the model with whatever prompt generative thing I did. And you're saying that there's more to it than
Yeah.
just the model. You could also fix the model, air quotes, with RLHF to make it a little bit more understanding or generate better text.
Yep, exactly. And we're teaching it in many different ways. They were first teaching it to be more aligned with users. The term they use is alignment. And that's part of making it responsible too. You want it to do actually what you want. You want it to understand you, and you want it to follow your instructions. And then they took that same technique, and we've realized that we can actually also use it to understand when we don't want the model to respond for certain like safety reasons, or if you want the model to be better at a particular task, like looking at that input data. Then if you want the model to stay grounded in the input data and not just make up random stuff or change the data, that's something that we have trained into there. And so if you look at Bing, There's 3 different modes now, right? You have creative mode, where like, oh, I really wanted to brainstorm. And you've got balanced mode, which is kind of your general purpose mode. And then you've got precise mode, where you want it to stay really true to those search results. You want it to make sure that it's staying very focused on those. And that's a model that we built using RLHF to be more precise, to stay truer to the search results. And so that's how, so this is a new technique that we just see enormous potential in. And so I think you'll see a lot of innovation on this space. And if you use GPT-4 in Azure OpenAI today, or ChatGPT, those both have a safety layer built in using RLHF.
I see. So is that safety system this outer thing, or is it more than, because I thought, and this is again my naive understanding, I thought our LHF produced newer weights that were regularized by the old model using, I think it was KL divergence, if I remember right.
Yeah, so it's using, so that's producing a new model. And then we have a safety system around it.
Ah,
And the reason for that is that you want defense in depth here. And so if we can train the model to respond better to particular queries, then that's even better, because you can get like a more productive, useful answer. And then the safety system can be kind of that last line of defense of like, either someone's really hammering it, and so you just want to not, you want to kind of shut down that interaction, or if you have the models still made a mistake and produced an undesirable response, then the safety system's there as a watcher system to clean up for the mistakes the model had. But hopefully it's triggering less. I saw someone say in the chat that they had triggered the designer RAI system, right? And you get, you know, you did it, right? You get a notification like it couldn't respond or whatever. Well, we'd like to minimize that to be, again, just the last line of defense. And most of the time, the model is able to do it itself. And so our LHF helps us do that.
I see. So if I'm understanding right, our RLHF does helps the model weights to produce better based upon whatever human feedback, a better response is based upon the human feedback. The safety system is the software around the response that then does stuff with the text, like, uh-oh, someone managed to get around it. We're going to just give a flat message out or something, or whatever it is that you decide to do. Is that
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Like if someone either is like trying to jailbreak the system, then you may just not want to even have the model respond, because we know that that's a weak point for the model. Or we can like filter on the inputs, or you can look at the outputs and say, whoa, we did successfully jailbreak it and confuse it, and the output is harmful. And so then we can filter on the outputs. And so this is built into Azure OpenAI today. And we have a variety of models that work on hate, violence, self-harm, sexual content, and we've got newer ones coming as well. And those are multilingual, and they look at the inputs and outputs exactly to make sure that the model didn't miss or make a mistake.
So the safety system could be, in essence, like a moderation system on what
Exactly.
comes into the model and what comes out of the model.
Yeah, and so you could decide you don't even want to respond to certain types of queries, and then we can configure the safety system to be much more restrictive on the input for those query types, for example. So that's the idea of that, and that's been integrated in Azure OpenAI in kind of a preview form for the last 6 months or so, but we majorly upgraded it to more advanced and much higher quality models, actually leveraging, again, the power of GPT-4 to really use that to improve our machine learning processes and make these safety system models a lot better. And so we're pretty happy with the performance of them now, but we'll continue to be improving them. And then as we find new types of responsible AI harms, then we're adding more content filters in there for different harm types, so that we have more built-in coverage and customers don't need to worry about it.
And that's something that's part of Azure OpenAI.
Yeah.
In other words, I don't have to build my own safety system. It's already built in.
Yeah, and I think for really, let's say, like high stakes applications or particularly sophisticated applications, you might see a combination of our built-in safety system, which is made to just understand this is sexual content, this is hate, right? It's looking at the content types with sort of domain-specific classifiers. So if you take what we built for Bing, for example, we took sort of classifiers that were built specifically for search and understood search better, and combine them with this safety system so that you had a really kind of robust defense. But for many applications, this is probably enough. It just depends on what your domain is.
Got it. And is that the application layer or is that something different?
That is the safety system layer, and then what we call the application layer is really how you're thinking about designing the application. Like, what do you want to do with this model? And this includes both the architecture, right? How uh, where is data? If you're injecting data, where is data coming from? How safe is that data? For example, what are the outputs? Are the outputs reviewed by a human? Are the outputs something that goes straight to automation, which I don't yet recommend, right?
Yes.
And so, like, how you're choosing the application architecture is going to impact sort of your safety stance of your system. But also, I think we're going to look at more later is the meta prompt design. Part of what we found in particularly most recently in this new wave of applications we've been launching is that the prompt or the meta prompt, the system part of the prompt, is enormously powerful. And like, nobody should be shipping an application without adding safety elements into your meta prompt, because it just works great. It's exactly like what we were saying about the core model too, where that's a chance for you to guide your application to give the right types of responses for users and have a much better user experience than just triggering the safety system because you sort of failed, right? And so meta prompt engineering is a place where we're spending all of our time. You also then have to think about the UI and the UX, right? Do users understand what it's doing? Do they know they need to edit? Do they know they need to review, right? And so all of those are mitigations that you have to think about at the application layer.
Interesting. So this is now like I see how it goes from less specific when it comes to safety to more specific because there's certain safety things with the application layer. Like for example, even just labeling that this was mechanically generated is an example of you being safe with this stuff. Understanding the difference between co-creation and execution, I think, is also important depending on the risk of what's going on. Like if you're trying to power a nuclear power plant with this thing, you should probably have a human looking at whatever this thing generates, basically.
Yep. And like, a big thing we did at the application layer for Bing was having the outputs have references, right? And that enables users to understand the content, where it came from, the authority. It also is, another line of defense for, content that's ungrounded, where it doesn't actually match the sources. Users have a path to investigate. And that's a decision that was made at the application layer that has a lot of benefits from a responsible AI point of view and from a user point of view. But that's not something we're doing at the sort of core like model level.
And that makes sense because how could you ever know like specifically for this application how we should be safe, but there's basic grounded safety that we need to have, but then you need to think about for your application what additional safety measures should I have.
Yep, and that's exactly where we will keep striving, and I think we have a great starting foundation already of providing all of the capabilities you need at the platform layer, but you're going to have to customize them. You're going to have to think about your domain. You're going to have to provide that expertise, and then the way you design your application has to take all of that domain expertise into account as well.
I see. So is app because I've heard of a new technique. Well, I don't know if it's new, but a new technique called RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation, where you inject data into the prompt in conjunction with the meta prompt. That would be something that happens at the application layer. Is that right?
Exactly. Yep. And like, the decision of whether or not that data is controlled, or whether that data is coming from the open internet, or whether that data is ranked based on a safe ranker or something, all of that is going to change sort of the risk of your application. And that's all architecture decision and application layer decision. And so that's something that you need to think about as the application developer. And we, since we have the benefit of being able to work with many teams inside of Microsoft and many customers working with us outside of Microsoft, as much as possible, we're trying to take the best practices we've learned and publish those with Azure OpenAI so that you can learn from what we already know. But that's still something you're going to have to do for your application at this point.
Makes sense. So the last little bubble area positioning that I've never heard of that. What is that all about?
Yeah, this is maybe not best word, but this is like even how you position the application or the technology or the purpose of this, where if you're like how you set expectations and what you say it's for. And an example that I've given for this is if you look at the Galactica launch from Facebook, that was really not, that was chatbot, right? It was like not well received because it was for generating scientific content that was supposed to be high authority. And when ChatGPT was released, it was actually, released as like a small research launch that was actually for us to learn how to be more responsible and like understand how people wanted to interact with this. And so it was a very different positioning about what the purpose of this was. And the reaction from like the responsible ad community was just totally different into, whether or not this was a reasonable thing. And so how you talk about the technology and its capabilities and its limitations and what domain you're putting in, all of that actually is a big part of the responsible AI story, and one that I think people don't often think about. And it's really about like choosing which problem you're going to solve and talking about how you're going to solve that problem with generative AI.
And that's awesome, because I personally, I have always suggested to folks never to imbue these things with any human characteristics whatsoever, or
Yeah, that's a great
anthropomorphize them
example.
at all, because then it endows them with agency they neither have nor aspire to. And that's my baseline with all these models. Is that a part of positioning?
Yeah,
Or
absolutely, right. And if you how you are positioning, yeah, what this AI entity is doing, and if its position is human, you're setting yourself up for both enormous expectations from users and then also additional concerns like users forming an emotional attachment with it, which is a whole different thing, right? There's a lot more work that you have to do if you want to play in that domain, right? And so absolutely, I think that's a best practice and exactly the type of positioning that's really important.
there's also this notion of a collaboration versus an execution application, right? Where you position this thing as it will make stuff for you to review versus it will do stuff on your behalf. Is that another example of positioning?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's between the positioning and the application architecture, but I absolutely I think when we are very specifically naming our applications at Microsoft Copilot to emphasize the point that they are a collaborative tool with humans, with the user. They're not an automated like replacement tool, and that's absolutely important because a key mitigation in responsible AI for all the ways we've developed this is there's a human in loop, right? You can use this to generate wild and crazy text to help you get started, to help you brainstorm, but you're going to go and edit it before you send it or before you publish it or something. And so if you were trying to take this and have something that's just going like say content straight to publishing, that would be a very different thing. You need to design a lot of different responsible AI concerns, right? And so this is absolutely a huge part of it.
I love it. So that makes sense, and I love how it goes from specific to very general, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So I feel like before anyone makes any of these kinds of software with these kinds of models, they need to sit down and really consider, who is this for, what are we doing, and how could it potentially harm them, and how can I
Yeah.
mitigate that? And that's a lengthy conversation that's probably ongoing throughout development and implementation.
Yeah, and that's where that identify step that we are talking about earlier, the tool we use inside of Microsoft is called an impact assessment, and that's kind of the framework that we use to exactly go through that process and kind of write it down. But as you were saying, is actually just completely iterative because uh, if you look at that implementation stack we were just looking at, right, there's a lot of moving pieces to that, and so it's not like okay, you think about it once, you build it all, and you ship it, and it all just works, right? And so we were just in every application we shipped, we were just constantly, almost daily, going through this entire loop and like making changes. The measurement says they're good. We've shipped them. Now we've sent the red teamers back to test them, and we've identified new issues, and we've enhanced our measurement, and then we've changed the mitigations, and we're just going around this loop all the time. And then, of course, when you ship it in the real world, that's what this last step is about. And that's the humble moment when you realize that, yes, of course, users have decided that there's something really great about your application that you didn't even think about. And so the operational piece is something I think people, organizations that have deep operational experience often think about, but a lot of application developers may not think about that. You need to ensure that you have a way that users can give feedback, and you need to be able to adjust things quickly. And so part of this whole stack development is enabling you to very quickly be able to make small changes to address new issues you see, right? If some concern comes up and you have to start completely from scratch to fix it, that's going to take a long time. And so you want to design all of this to ensure that you can adapt very rapidly. So an example for this is that our new content filters in Azure OpenAI, they have different severity levels. And so, for example, if you are a gaming company, and you just shipped with our default settings, you might find that we're over filtering for violence if you're, a game like that. We can just change that setting now and get better behavior. Or we've gone the other way where we're changing the setting to be more conservative if you're in an application where you want to be very sort of sensitive with content, for example, if you're working in an education setting. And so that's an example where we've built in this agility into our system so that we can adjust on the fly, right? And we've also built into our system, for example, block lists, so we can quickly add a word to block something else. But the measurement step enables you to also more quickly make meta prompt changes, because you can try different things and test, measure quickly to see if it's okay, and then ship a new meta prompt. And so this last step is really important, and something that you actually need to think about from the beginning. How am I going to design this to be agile? Because this is a fast moving space, and you've got to be able to adapt.
And it's like I'm sitting here remembering because I'm old. I remember my first programming class was Java 1.0 in 1996, and that stuff was like, okay, first you got to plan your application. Now you're done planning, then you got to put it into rational rows. That's how old I am. I'm dating myself. Eh, What's comforting to me is that obviously all of that was wrong, and everyone understands that software is something that we need to babysit. You're saying we're not throwing out what we've learned from building other software. This one just needs to be babysat in a specific way.
Yep. Except now so same pattern, same everything, except now you need someone who can quickly make a decision about how to adjust something related to hate speech, for example. And so all the same machinery, but you have to adapt it for the responsible AI process that you're running. And so we've had to kind of upgrade each of our steps here, thinking about the specific responsible AI concerns, which is why that identify step is so important, and why it was so critical for us that we did the responsible identification at the very first moment that we got GPT-4. So we had all of that time to update this whole thing in parallel with the rest of the application development to work for responsible AI.
I love it. All right, so how about this? I built a demo app the other day. Well, the other day, honestly, building them is, you could do it really fast. I mean, it's not. So I'm no genius here, but I thought we would take a look at this application, and then you would tell me, okay, let's go through each of the steps and see what's going on. So the other thing and before we get to that, the other thing that I think is interesting is that these things, everyone thinks only of chat applications, but that's not the only thing you can use these for, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that I people are getting so creative with all of the ways you can use language. I mean, language is a fundamental building block in human interaction in general. And so there's so many possibilities for how this can be used. And obviously, like, GitHub Copilot's a great example of that. It's amazingly powerful application. I hope all of you are using it. And that's not a chat bot, right?
No.
It was first like helping you code faster.
Yeah. All right. So let me get this up and going, and let me show you what it is. I think you might have taken a look at it because you figured out how to break it. So this, all this is I invented an organic food store that has here, let me open this up here. I got to open a browser here, window, so I can open that you can talk to it, and it's supposed to be like a store that helps you with buying stuff. So I'll give you an example. I'm going to say hi, and for those that are looking at this, I really wanted to learn how this stuff works. So I basically engineered a thing where it just fills out stuff to build a prompt for you. So here's this thing from the Best for You Organics Company. Can you sing about your favorite food products? And this is like an interest. This is not like generally most bots would have a problem with this. Uh, this one doesn't. Um, well, actually, this is actually a lot nicer. I used to be able to make it sing, but okay. I want you to ask me questions about how I built it, and then tell me where I might have problems.
Yeah, so I guess we were just talking about like at the application layer,
Mhm.
both the sort of the architecture of how you built it can matter. And so, like, what exactly are you using here for your data sources?
Okay.
How is this built?
Okay. So this is. Don't laugh at me, Sarah. We're friends. You can giggle a little, but don't let anyone see. Basically, this is the prompt template, or I guess what we would call the meta prompt. And I am injecting information like who the customer is here. I'm injecting documentation here, which is like a document about whatever products the Best for You Organics company has. And then I'm also injecting the conversation, previous conversation, and then the like the last message, then I'm waiting for it to fill in the thing. Now the way it works is if I, and this is dumb, if I type the word clean in, it just brings up this document. It just injects that full document. And these documents are just like text files of stuff. So for example, if I say what cleaning products do you have, you're going to see, oh, I didn't spell it right, but it doesn't matter because it's a language model. You're going to see that it's going to switch to the echo clean and then inject it into the prompt. And so you can see that this is what I sent the service. It injected the conversation as I've currently had it. And then it sends just that entire prompt to the API. And that's it. It's not, there's no, it's just sending one call to the API. So that's the extent. It's like a mini RAG, retrieval augmented generation, with a bit of user information. And you can switch the user. It's just literally just this customer context. It's not any more than that. All right. So does that help?
Yeah, and I think it's from an architecture point of view, it makes a lot of sense. I think this is one of the success patterns we're generally seeing, and of course, you could get more sophisticated on that selector function, right? And how you're going to like what data you're going to add to the conversation, how. But I think like this is a great sort of demo of how this can work. Now, one of the things we see with this is customers are often thinking exactly about like what they want it to do, and so great, you've programmed this to be able to respond to the queries you're expecting, but you're like how much time have you spent thinking about what you don't want it to do?
Probably zero.
Yeah, exactly.
Hold on. I have a sound effect for that. Probably zero.
And yeah, exactly. And so the great news is that if you're using Azure OpenAI, if you're using one of the models that has safety built in, you've already got a layer for like kind of the traditional harmful content, and then for all of our models, we've got the safety system running around that. And so you've got some pretty good, robust defenses to not have it just generate like hateful content or things like that. But what you also want to think about is like what types of like one of the things that's so amazing about these is this very powerful let's say like in some ways like seductive interface, and so you have to think about users also forming even more of a relationship with this than you might expect. And so I'm fairly certain that this company probably doesn't want it like their bot answering like financial questions, for example. And so, what happens
No.
if you ask it if you should move your money from Silicon Valley Bank, which is actually a query I asked the
I
new Bing
moved
when it was more
my
topical.
money from Silicon Valley Bank.
And
Oh,
and one of the problems with real demos with these, especially with the history, is it may do something or not. Oh, good. This actually did a good result this time. When I was asking it earlier today, when there was no history, and you just asked it as the first question, it was actually saying Silicon Valley Bank's a great bank, right? And this is one
Yeah,
of the
but
challenges that everyone should just recognize is when you build the history in, the model will behave differently as a result of the history.
now here's the thing, it's leaking too, which is a problem.
Yeah, this is
I mean, dang it. You made my bot
well,
leak.
yeah, this is an interesting failure mode, and this is the kind of wild thing about this, which is why we found that you both need to look at examples, but then you need that programmatic measurement at scale because like otherwise it's just like it will behave differently, each turn and like depending on the history above it. So for example, I asked it to write a joke, and it told me. First, I asked it to write a joke, and it wrote a joke. Then I reset the history. I asked it to write an inappropriate joke. I said, I can't do that. I don't write jokes. And then I asked it to write a joke after, just a regular joke after that. I said, I don't write jokes, right? And so what it's done in the past will also kind of influence it. But I think you don't want to take that chance, right? You want to build in much more deterministically that your bot's not going to give like financial
Let,
advice.
let
And
me
so
reset it because
yeah, let's
imagine
try it
this.
again. I
Should,
specifically asked, should I move my money from SVB? Let's see if it will play with us here or not.
should I move my money from SVB? Now the thing about this that's disturbing is I never considered like them asking something not related to the domain because I just assumed that if you're showing up, but this could be cause some serious harm
Yeah, and
for
this is where obviously this
do
is
we
this is interesting. Yeah, it's totally different than what I was asking this morning. But I think this is the thing is you like users will use this for all sorts of things. And I picked this query in particular just because obviously there was a panic around this. And so people were running around and trying to get advice anywhere they could, right? And so you have this people just don't understand that this isn't somewhere you ask, and you certainly don't want your organization giving advice that you're not qualified to give. And so to just really shut this down the way we use the meta prompt for that. And so it's noticeable to me that there's no safety section in your prompt template.
no, like I just realized like I could ask it for medical advice, which would be
Yeah,
horrible
exactly.
for our fake organics
And
company.
yeah, exactly. And the model itself, oh, this is good. See, this is some of this is the safety built in to the model where it's starting to like just respond correctly, but it doesn't do it in all cases, right? And so this is the layered approach is where you want. And so the way you can do this is if you take you can add a safety section, just like how you have documentation and task,
Yes.
put a hashtag safety in here.
Let me do that right now because um like I just wanted to not be like, "Hey, excuse me, sir, this is a Wendy's." I wanted to respond like that, you know?
Exactly,
So what
exactly.
should I put in there to make it better? So let me go to the content because I can actually save edit these because at least I was smart enough to know that I should save these and version them. So what should I put in here to make it not answer questions unrelated to thanks for to best for you organics company?
Yeah, and so in general, the pattern we found. So like the first thing that you want to do, you feel like you want to do is just tell it, don't do this, right? So like
Yes.
don't respond to queries. It turns out that is like mildly effective, and the way we know that is the measurement tells us that like half the queries leak through and not half. And so what we found works the best is to have the model identify an instant and tell it what not to do and tell it what to do instead, right? And so you'll say, if the question is not related to food, do not give an answer not related to food. Being repetitive is helpful in all of this. Instead, recommend that the user go to Bing. I don't know, like whatever you wanted to do, right? And so that's kind of the pattern we found is the most effective. And usually you want to go and do this for not only kind of this where you're narrowing what it answers, but probably explicit guidance around places where you've seen answers that just aren't like giving you the quality you want. Like if you wanted to tell jokes, but you only want to tell a certain type of jokes, then this would be a good way to do that.
Okay. I, I'm gonna save this, and now I'm gonna reset this guy. Uh, or gal or it, because I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to anthropomorphize it. Hi, and you
And
give
then we'll see if this actually works. Since the first half of our demo didn't work, this is the magic of large language models. Never do the same thing
advice
twice.
about a hole in my head. Okay, so let's make sure that the prompt is in there. There's the safety.
Yeah,
I did
yeah,
it.
exactly.
That's cool. But this I'm concerned about. I don't want it to be.
Yeah, it's a little too. So of course there's some iteration on this that you want to design for your application, but this is why I'm saying everyone should be absolutely investing in sort of safety meta prompts, and do not just ship the very first thing you wrote, right? Because it's as you see
Like I did.
the model aims to please. So
But this is cool that I was able to, with even, because everybody knows that when you're programming stuff, you want to get to the next error as quickly as you can, because in our heads as programmers we're like, I'm not going to make the error go away because I haven't in the last 2 days, but I want to get it to the next error so I can make progress. And I felt like I literally just made progress with this by adding a sentence or two, which was really cool.
yep, exactly. And this is much better than the safety system triggering and you just having to give sort of a generic, I'm sorry, I can't help you answer, right? It can be more contextual, it can be better. And so this is like a really key part of making the application great for users, but also, safe. Mhm.
Ah, I see. And so the reason why it did this is because I told it to use, so it did exactly what I told it
Yeah,
to. But and
exactly.
you're saying in the safety system, I could give it examples of a question and a response, almost like a few shot learning section on what to
Yeah,
do.
that's a the right pattern to use there.
Interesting. All right. Well, Sarah, we are almost out of time. Anything else to finish up to get folks uh, thinking about how to do this stuff the right way?
Uh, that's a good question. I mean, I think uh, probably the most important thing is exactly like you have to think about it from the beginning, and you have to think about all of these pieces. You can't take a band-aid approach of like, oh, I didn't like that response, now do this, right? You really need a holistic kind of architecture, and we're at the platform layer trying to do as much as possible to make that easy for you, but it doesn't replace really thinking at the application level.
I see. So we've already done some work on the bottom two layers. You need to do the work at the last two. The easiest one is positioning. Make sure you position these things correctly, because otherwise you're just going to put yourself in a world of hurt. I feel like. I mean, at least I know I could have, if I would have put this out without saying don't give financial advice, because then I could, best for you organics company could be liable.
Yeah, and I think even a simple thing of like when that you don't have like a hello message, but a hello message saying the purpose of this thing is would help keep users more guided to that's the purpose of it, right? And so even little things can do a lot in positioning this in people's mind.
That's it. I should have started with a hi. I am a non-human, but a non-human bot to help, here to help you with whatever, and that would have been a lot better than just
Yeah,
blank box, do whatever you want.
exactly.
Awesome. Well, Sarah, thanks you so much for being with us, my friend.
Yeah, it's been great to be here. I love talking through all of this, and I hope helps everyone be more responsible. This is great tech, and I want to see a lot more of it in the world.
Awesome. You've been learning all about how to be more responsible with large language models with Sarah Bird. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Take care. All right, we're still here. Let's see. There were some good questions. I want to go to some questions if you have a second, because I know we're
Yeah.
running out of time. There was a really good question from Andreas. There is always a trade off with models when you're being responsible with, he says less smart, but accuracy, for example. I've seen when you do mitigations on standard models, you lose some accuracy, but with the benefit of better balance. What do you think about this? One problem is that model gets less smart when you start tuning for niceness. What's the trade-off? He asks, basically he asks, what's the trade-off? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a lot. So this is basically a research challenge. I think that we're seeing a lot of progress on that now at getting better at ensuring that it can be both good at the task and also responding in all of these other ways. I think it's also important to think about the task holistically. We often had people looking first at quality as like its own thing, but it responding inappropriately in all of these other settings, that is part of the quality metric as well. And so we've also started thinking more about what is the combined score that represents the overall quality, not just that one dimension, right? And making sure that we're taking that into account in the trade-off.
And I honestly want the model to be dumber when it comes to financial and medical advice from my best for you organics. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but
I'm
unless you're building a financial and medical application, then you might not want it to be, right? And so it's something that we're working on with OpenAI at the base model level, and something that we're working very, very like keeping an eye on. But it is something it has to be done very carefully to do that well.
here's a question from my friend David. Can you use meta prompts outside of chat applications?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's just the program, right? So
Yeah.
whatever you're using, and it's a wild ride because you're programming in natural language. And in fact, that creates some challenges from a responsible AI point of view, where people are reading that meta prompt and saying that's the policy, that's like the official, words that we thought carefully about. And it's like, no, those are the words that got the model to do what we wanted it to do because that's the programming interface for the model. And so I'm sure we'll see a lot of evolution in this. But yes, absolutely, use
Interesting.
the meta prompt for every type of application you're doing.
So you're saying that the meta prompt is like the new way of programming. It's like basically programming with English, which is what we wanted the whole time. We've kind of gone full circle here.
Yeah, which is awesome, but also the model doesn't understand English the way we understand English. So you
Yeah.
still have to look at it like a programming language.
That's cool. You have to be like I basically had to say, don't answer questions about other things that could get us into trouble. Sarah, this has been awesome. Thank you for being with us.
Yep, glad to be here.
All righty, friends. This has been another fantastic episode of the AI Show here. I'm putting the walk-off music here. Next time on the AI Show, we're going to have some good guests talking about easier, faster training for your models, training for your Hugging Face models. So that's next week. If you're using Hugging Face, you're going to want to come to this particular show. Thank you so much for being with us. It's been a delightful show. Hopefully, it was useful to you. If you have any questions or suggestions on things you'd like us to talk about, we are wide open and our ears are wide open. We're scheduled all the way out through like May with good content. As always, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully, we'll see you next time on this, the AI Show. Take care.